Okay, if you're asking yourself if this video is about you, it is. There is a problem in birding communities everywhere. My knowledge is limited to the North American mentality, especially Ontario. And in particular, this video is about a place in Ontario in the greater Toronto area called Downsview Park. And to put it in perspective, Toronto is a huge city, very big landmass. And Downsview Park is kind of a refuge for migrating birds in the center of the city. So you can imagine a lot of these birds are flying through and all they see are buildings. They've crossed the lake or they're going the other way. And they had this big park to stop over in, and that park just happens to be surrounded by millions of people, including lots of avid birders and photographers. Now, here's the issue, especially with owls. And I think when it comes to this park, about a year ago, I started a Facebook group with a friend focused on ethical photography, and we kind of backed off and went down other options because it just wasn't really clicking, unfortunately. There is a Facebook group in Ontario, Ontario Bird Photographers, and one of their principal rules is, let's see if I can find it here. I think I deleted it off my phone. But one of their official rules in the group is that they do not monitor ethics. They don't care about ethics, and they say ethics is up to the individual photographer. And I think that's absolute nonsense and trash. It's the reason I left the group, not to mention the quality of a lot of the photography. But it's pretty clear who's out baiting, who's trespassing, who's harassing owls. Or other birds, but especially owls. Not to mention, who wants to stand shoulder to shoulder under a bridge all day long with 50 other people. So that's for the peregrine falcons in Hamilton, by the way, if you haven't heard. So if you're feeling targeted by this and you're thinking, hey, I go to Downsview and hey, I go to the bridge, this probably isn't going to change your mind. You're probably going to get mad. You're probably going to put some comments underneath. I'm going to argue. Some people might support you. I think a lot more people are going to probably come at you. So I'll leave that up to you. But here's the trouble with owls. When we had our little Facebook group, everybody was having this discussion, and people who were advocating why they think it's okay to go to public parks, the argument is always, and this is for like the pacifist celebrity birder, they're always saying, look, I'm not causing a problem. I stay a respectful distance away, and I don't go that often. And I say, okay, great. But in a city of millions of people, if every bird enthusiast says, well, I only want to go a couple of times, I hate to say, but that means the owl's going to have pressure nonstop all the time, all day, every day. And of course, there's some photographers. I'm not going to name names of local people, but there's some people who are there every single day. Right now, the bird in question is a barred owl who is just getting relentlessly stalked and pressured. It's another destination in Ontario, 20, 30 minutes away from Downsview Park called Thixon's Woods. Same thing. They had to block it off last year because the saw-whet owls that were in a tree, they were just bombarded all the time. And I believe last year, I think a saw-whet died at the woods as well. I think it was at Thixon's. I could be wrong on the details. But there have been many owl deaths from these types of behavior. Owls don't like to fly. They don't just fly around all day long. And the other thing is they don't like to just sit and keep an eye on you. So even if you're not spooking the owl, even if you're not flushing the owl, if there's enough people in proximity to the owl that it has to keep attention on you, then it's not getting the rest it needs to be a successful hunter at night. And yes, most owls that come through Downsview don't die. Most of them probably end up being okay. But that doesn't mean there's no problem, and that doesn't mean that the ones that are not okay and that do suffer, that everyone should get a pass. So here's the thing, why are we pretending? Why do you pretend that you care about wildlife, and why do you pretend that you care about owls? It's no different than people chasing pine martens around the garbage bins at Algonquin Park. And I get it. I mean, I've been there. I'm going to have a lot more to say about ethics in the future. We've all screwed up. We've all been excited in the moment and done something that in hindsight you realize could have endangered the animal. And look, you have to live and learn. I'm not saying anyone's perfect, but I think if you know better, and if you're watching this video and you didn't know better, if you're a novice and you've never really thought about owl behavior, then maybe this will enlighten at least a couple of people, but you have to put your enthusiasm in check. And you have to think about what happens to these birds. If you're chasing the bird and you're flushing the bird, then you are putting pressure on that bird to hunt, which is already difficult because of changes in climates and, look, reductions in bugs, which then reduces certain species, and all these things go up the food chain. Bald eagles are a perfect example, not even from photographer pressure, although that has also been a problem in the GTA in recent years, where eagles abandoned a nest because they were just harassed all day, every day. People were there. But that's the thing. These things go up the food chain. You look at eagles, and it was DDT getting into their food supply, causing weak eggs, and their eggs were failing, and the nests were failing, and you had the population just decimated. So these little problems go up the chain, and they cause issues. So you go to Downsview Park, and the trouble is, a lot of people will argue, well, the owls can just leave. I say, well, there's really nowhere to go. It's not that they can go into the next field. They're surrounded by cities. So to the bird, unless the bird is going to completely move to a total different habitat, 50, 60 kilometers away, it's not like a situation where you're driving down a back road and you see an animal and you pull over and it doesn't like it, so it flies further off into the field, and that's the end of it. And even there, I try to be careful. If I see a hawk that is actively hunting and you can see it like scanning the ditch for food, I don't stop my car because I know that bird is ready to eat. I know if I stop my car, I'm going to stop the bird from eating. So it's not worth screwing up the bird's activity just so I can get a photo. But flushing animals is part of enjoying nature, whether you have a camera or not. Animals are going to get spooked and run from you. So I think you have to be aware of what kind of situations you're in. So if you're walking around a big public park in a city and you spook the owl, and then someone else spooks the owl, and the owl has to keep moving around, or even if the owl doesn't fly, again, it's the middle of the day and it's trying to roost in a tree and it's constantly got its eyes open looking at you. These are problems, and these are how you lead to, first of all, dead owls, which imagine being a part of that. Like, how can you go out and photograph an owl that later ends up dead? Like, how do you feel good about that? The other thing is, like, why do you feel good about your photos? What's the draw of celebrity birding? And I get it. I love owls as much as anyone. I've seen 2 barred owls in 3 years of birding. Look, I understand the draw. But the problem is what? You want to just be dropped a location, have someone tell you where it is, and then you go and do your thing, and you take the same picture of the same bird on the same post that everyone else has taken, and then you put it on Instagram for the likes, and then in the back of your head, you have to know this is a pressured bird that's under a lot of stress. And here's the thing. It's not just something for novices. You go there, and you're going to see tons of, the pseudo-amateur pros with their big primes and just out there all the time. You're going to see the draws of at some point baiting. You might see people like throwing up mice and stuff like that, trying to get action shots. Even last year, a huge YouTuber, a guy I used to really look up to, and all of a sudden last winter I saw he was in Ontario, and I thought, wow, this is so cool. A big kind of hero of mine is birding locally. And then I saw, where is he going? He goes right to Downsview Park. And I messaged him and I said, hey, I know you're not from here. I think he's from Florida. And I said, you might not know what's going on. And his message to me really put me off. He said that he didn't see anything unethical going on. And the next sentence, he acknowledges that there were a ton of people and people were getting too close to the birds. And I'm thinking well, that's what I was messaging you about. So if you don't think that a ton of people in an urban center being way too close to the birds is an issue, then I don't know what to tell you. So, I think when you're scrolling through Instagram and you see pictures of an owl looking straight into the camera with its eyes big and wide, ask yourself how that happened, because that's not the look of a relaxed owl. So, especially if you see someone's feed and you see a lot of pictures like that, especially if they start claiming, oh, I just turned the corner and startled this owl. Well, there's some people out there that seem to have a real knack for startling owls. So I find that a little sus. What else? I think it's the kind of things like we say, baiting and, hounding locations and hounding nests and all these kind of things. They add up to, crappy photos with unethical swayings and dead birds. And it's just not something you should be proud of. So if you don't know any better, I hope this video can at least get you thinking about what are you doing. I'm going to have some people on for a discussion probably over the holidays about certain cases. As an example, again, I said I'm not perfect. The first time I ever saw a barred owl, I was out looking for snowy owls and didn't find any. And on the drive home, my friend texted me and he said, hey, there's a barred owl hunting in a field, dirt road, no traffic, no one around, owl's not close. He said it's off in the distance, but if you want to see one, you can at least kind of see it across the field doing its thing. So I drove up, and of course I saw it, and it's, this big, super small, no photos, whatever. And it hunted. We saw it go for a few things, and then it was kind of moving around, doing its thing, and went off into the bush, and that was pretty cool. 20 minutes later on the drive home, again, I'm driving down this dead-bend back road, and all of a sudden as I'm going, I see this thing jump up out of the bush onto a fence post, and it was my second barred owl. Now here's where I went wrong. I hit the brakes and stopped the car and got out because I was so excited. And at that point, I flushed the owl across the road. Luckily, no traffic, but I mean, that's a perfect case where you scare an animal roadside if there'd been another car coming. And of course, it flew low. It was only a few feet off the road. Easily could have gotten hit by a car. Luckily, that didn't happen. It landed in a tree roadside. I took pictures for, I think, 30 seconds. It was an interesting encounter. He was very close. He was clearly startled, not sure what to make of me. So he was like kind of staring straight at me. And then after about 30 seconds decided like, this isn't what I'm here for. And he flew away off into the field behind him. But again, I remember in the moment being so thrilled that I saw that owl. And then later thinking, wow, like what would have happened if I had flushed him into a car and he got hit by a car, something that I would just like never let go. So there's a lot of people who don't care. If you bait owls, piss off, because you don't care about wildlife. You don't care what happens to them. All you care about are the photos. And I have to say, like, just go to like a conservatory or a rehab place, because there's nothing wild about your photos. There's nothing special about them, and anyone can take them. So there's no skill. There's nothing to be proud of. And I think if you really want to be someone who focuses on the conservation part of wildlife and making something special, then do it the right way. And if that means that you don't get to see your favorite animals as often, it also means that when you do see them, it'll be a more special encounter and something that you remember. So, this is an ongoing dialogue I think we have to have more of, but yeah, if you're an Ontario shooter and you're at Downsview all the time, there's a reason that, a lot of people are mad at you, and maybe you should think about it, because I can promise you the conservation-minded photographers notice what you do, and it's not well looked at. So consider that, because maybe you just don't know any better. Maybe you're just excited and you live close and you're really pumped to have owls down the street, but you're doing a lot of harm, and you should think about that. So we'll be back.